Welcome to Nailed It, a podcast featuring business tips from industry leaders, presented by Clever Punch. Here's your host, Jade Flogerzi.
All right, welcome back to Nailed It. Today we are joined with Brian Sikich, the creative mind behind B Studios. He's based here in Santa Barbara, and he is a storyteller who's turning life's best moments into vibrant films. When he's not capturing special occasions, you can find him on the bike trails or playing ultimate frisbee on the beach. Brian's married to his Stardust soulmate, Mandy, and they are the proud dad, dog, and mom dog owners to an energetic Sheltie Thor. Brian's journey into videography began with a fascination for nature time-lapse, which quickly grew into a passion for filming life celebrations. Now he's known for creating elegant and honest films that capture real people and real moments. From luxury events to legacy projects, his work has a touch of magic that makes it unforgettable. Today, Brian will be sharing his story, his love of video, what makes B Studio films truly one of a kind. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
So how long have you been doing this?
Probably around 11, 12-ish years. I did do a little bit of photography in college, and kind of out of that found that the camera that I was doing, like you said, some nature time lapse where you just stitch a ton of images together and it creates some movement or kind of simulates like a video. And then realized that there was like a switch on my camera that just flicked it into video mode. And had a friend of mine, actually my first wedding ever was second shooting, is what we call it in the industry, for a wedding. And so we go back and we watch that first wedding that we ever did, and sometimes we're like, oh my gosh, we cringe, definitely, for sure.
But we charge people for that.
I know, right? You're like, we should have been paying you to let us practice at your wedding. But still, there were still some moments that we got that were like, oh, actually, no, we had sort of the creative knack for it, and we saw moments, and we were just kind of learning how to use at the time what limited gear and technology was available. And of course, a decade later now, cameras are getting better and better by the minute. And so just the tools and things that are at our disposal now, kind of figuring out how to use those. But honestly, sometimes even the iPhones that we have are incredible tools to use for storytelling. So I've been at it for a while.
You and Mandy make incredible wedding films. So if anyone wants to see your work, and please visit your website. They'll just be blown away. But the reason I wanted to have you on the show is because you have ventured into the commercial world as well. And I was at an event a couple weeks ago, opening for the new bar in town, the Lion's Tail, and met you there. And I think the next morning, maybe, there was a video up on their Instagram that just the quality was insane. Like the creativity behind the shots that you used, the audio behind it, the sound effects, the music. I was like, is this the same bar that I was at? This is incredible. So immediately I made the connection between that piece of content directly affecting the business as an investment, right? Because I wanted to go back. I sent it to a bunch of friends. I'm like, oh, I was here. We should go. Did you? Oh, you weren't invited? That's too bad. You should go. So the reason I want to have you on the show is because so many businesses feel the pressure right now to include video in their marketing. But a lot of people are struggling with how to do that. And there's so many questions around that. So I'm so excited to have a conversation around that and talk strategy. First of all, why don't we talk about some pitfalls that you see business owners get into when it comes to video strategy?
Yeah, great question. I'm guilty myself of falling into all of those pitfalls. We create content for a living, but it is funny how then we're also responsible too. We're held to the same standard of we need to show up for our own clients, our own followers, our own. And so I think first and foremost, just showing up and doing it, no matter what it looks like. Not falling into the pitfall of being paralyzed by needing it to look a certain way or needing it to be a certain thing, but just doing it. And so that's not letting the overwhelm of it all get to you. And it takes time to sort of, if you are doing it on your own, to kind of build the chops, so to speak, be able to, I think I was telling you when we were chatting, I had to do my own sort of little intro for this new product we were launching. And even just recording myself talking for a 60-second story, I was in the backyard and I did like 30 takes of it because each time it was so bad, or like I couldn't get the words out, or like I needed bullet points or whatever. So I get it. It's hard, and we're not all like good at it by default. Like we're not paid actors. We're not necessarily all comfortable in front of a camera. And so, but I will say the more often you do it, the easier it does get. And the more you can sort of build that positive, I guess, relationship with it, where you're like, hey, I can't actually show up for 10, 15 seconds and show my face, which is ultimately what people want to see. Like people like doing business with people they like. And so I'm assuming a large part of the audience who like small business owners that are connecting, people to people. That's a huge part of it. Show your face. Just show up and do it.
I echo your same thoughts. I talk to clients who I find get too concerned with the quality or how that first video is going to go. And so they're obsessing over every little detail, who they're going to hire, what kind of equipment that they're going to use. So I agree with you about just jumping in.
Well, also to that, there's an element where people get paralyzed by the thought of the cost. And so they have in their mind, you see, it doesn't have to have a Nike commercial budget for the content to be effective. You don't have to go out and spend 20 or 30 grand to get one awesome video that then, it can be much more digestible, bite-sized. Like there are people out there who offer services that aren't necessarily, there's different tiers of production. There's different entry points into it. So I think a lot of times I see people will hesitate because they're like, well, we don't know what it'll do for it. We don't have it in the budget to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, yeah, but you're looking at something that you actually may not even need. Like maybe you don't need that level of production. Maybe you can find someone else who offers still quality and still the ability for you to show up and get yourself and your content out, but at a price point that isn't as intimidating. So I think that is oftentimes a big holdup, is that people just think it's wickedly expensive, which it can be. Like we do see some of the, Nike, Peloton, I don't know, like we're inundated with ads day in and day out. And so we see the quality of it and we're like, we associate that with being expensive. And it is, but there are ways to, make it a little more bite-sized.
Another thing that I see people do, business owners do, is maybe they have too high of expectations of how to start or what their goals are when they start. A good example, I've heard this from many, many business owners, is I want to do a video a day. And that's a lot to bite off.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of that myself. I've seen so many friends in the photo video space where, we are creators by trade. And so but we also have this obligation to kind of turn around and face the other direction and kind of create for ourselves. And I have seen folks where they sign up for a post a day for 100 days and whatever. And it's like, it's exhausting. It's not manageable. It's not sustainable. And I'm genuinely curious. I spend a lot of time on Instagram. Like we put a lot of content out on Instagram, but I'm actually not a guru by any means. Like I still am just as confused by it as the person next to me in terms of what Instagram rewards, what it likes. Like I'm not an algorithm expert by any means, but I'm actually curious if you would even be rewarded for showing up every day for a day in a row. Like I know Instagram does reward consistency, but I'm genuinely curious if they would reward like you showing up every single day for 100 days. Like I'm not sure if that is, if you're not doing yourself a favor, and maybe you're not doing your Instagram a favor either by doing something like that, but just having kind of a plan of like, hey, this is what is sustainable. This is a habit that I can create. And this is something that I can, if I am genuinely doing it myself, this is the investment of time that's like reasonable for me to be able to like put into this. And so building the habits small instead of just like biting off that huge, kind of the whole New Year's resolution thing. We all, and we're all guilty of it. But legitimately, this is something where even myself included, like we do have to work at making this into like a very habitual thing. And so start small. Like don't set the bar too high right out of the gates,
Yeah. And come up with something that you can continue consistently. We're getting into, this is great because I want to talk about this anyways. We're getting into a little bit of details around strategy. I would love to spitball some savvy video strategies with you. How could a business owner incorporate video in a way that's consistent, not overwhelming, and makes an impact on their business. And I want to have this conversation in the context of people that you work with, people that I work with, maybe people that are listening. So small to medium-sized business owner, most likely a local presence and offering a service to their local community. So with that context in mind, and obviously the goals that are around that type of business, what are some video strategies that somebody could take and go, I can run with that, I can do that?
I'm signing up for this as well. Like, is there? Am I the person that savvy Instagram strategies? Like, sign me up. Like, where's the authority on this? I think I do. I get it. I mean, it can be overwhelming sometimes to think through. Okay, like, do I go out and pay someone to come up with a strategy for me? Do I how do I'm not a creative person by nature. How do I keep coming up with different things that will genuinely attract the followers, the audience, and then the audience that I do have, like, keep them engaged, kind of piggybacking on the first question of like a pitfall. One thing I do see sometimes is people think that there's just an easy, hey, if I just hire these guys to build a following, then people are going to see my stuff. I'm like, well, a following of fake people that aren't actually interested in you and your brand doesn't actually do anything for you. So actually showing up with your products, what you offer, what do you do? But then also being able to be like, okay, well, what else can I talk about? What else can I show? And then we'll also then you can shift into focus on the why. Like, why do I do what I do? What problem am I solving? And that will kind of start to generate some ideas of okay, how can I actually show up? What is the problem that I'm solving? There are going to be people on Instagram that will see that, and you'll connect with them and they'll follow you, and then they'll watch your next video and they'll watch the video after that because they're genuinely interested in the authority and the product and whatever it is that you're bringing to the table. And so you don't have to be a creative guru to necessarily. It doesn't have to be flashy. It doesn't have to be trendy. It doesn't necessarily have to be, there are some basics that we want to nail. Like, okay, we want to be able to hear you. We want to be able to see you. Another thing is brevity, having it be short, and Instagram rewards you for it being short. But bottom line, you are they're after what you have and what you know and what you provide. And so just being able to kind of go through and map out a list of here's what I know on a sheet of paper, and just being able to talk about it for 10 seconds about this or 15 seconds about that. Yes. And sprinkle that out through a period of a month. It doesn't have to be, what's the word? I think I used the word trendy before, but it doesn't have to be a skit. We all know the TikTok skits and the Instagram things to hook someone or to catch attention. It's if you are blessed with that gift of creativity, then great. Go for it. I personally am not. I mean, we are able to produce some compelling content that shows people hey, this brand or this company really values showing us their best and really putting an element of quality and production and taking away all the obstacles and the roadblock between me and this showing us clearly what they do and the thing that they want us to know or whatever. But there is also that element of you don't have to be a clever creator to connect with your audience. So I think being less than the oh my gosh, I have to make this creative so it does well, instead of no, actually people just are after what you know and what you
just show your business. You're touching on a strategy when it comes to social media that probably 95% of our clients fall into or is a good fit for them, which is what you said: show off the business, talk about what you do, talk about your services, what makes you special, the team that they're going to work with. Because with most of our clients, Instagram, for example, or whatever social media platform, is really just an extension of their website or an extension of their portfolio. So if somebody's going to look at their content, it's because they're seeking out that business specifically. They heard about it or they're thinking about working with you. They go to your page and they start viewing your content. So that strategy really fits with that type of business who's local, has a local following. We live in a small town. They're not a personality. They're not a creator for their career. And
Right.
so when somebody finds that page, what content do you have that is going to move them closer to signing the contract with you, wanting to work with you, versus this other strategy that is so popular and that we get so much noise about, which is all about trends and audio and clips and engagement and growing a following. But what I've talked with so many business owners about, or coaches or executive coaching, Instagram is a weird place to get business. It's not where leads are coming from. Yes, you might have a following. Maybe those people are close friends. But if you're on there regularly and you're looking at how your stories are doing, it's typically the same people every day that are seeing your stuff. You're not really reaching a broader audience. And newsflash, most people are on there to catch up with their friends and their family and see what their personal relationships are doing. They're not on there to see businesses. So if somebody's looking at your content from a business perspective, it's probably because they're searching you out and they want to know more. And all the more reason, like you're saying, to have these videos that are going to push them to work with you and to choose you.
Right. And they're also looking to like authenticate you as a business. They're looking for just the like, hey, I want to know a little bit more. Like I've already been through your website. I've already been through your about and this and that, whatever, but I want to see a little bit more about you guys. I want to know a little bit more of like the personality or the ethos or the just kind of the way you show up. And so people can, instantly click. And if they see some of your faces and if they see some of it, and instantly they're like, okay, I already know that they check the boxes for what they can do for me, but like, am I actually sold on who they are as people? And so that's kind of just one extra place where you can have a whole gallery of where, people can just skim through real quick and be like, boom, yes, like I click immediately and we're good to go. It's just another extension of your website to a degree. In some cases, it's the opposite. Sometimes Instagram is how they find you, and then they do go to the website. It just kind of, it depends from industry to industry, but it is kind of cool how those tools do, they do link back and forth and support each other. So
yes, absolutely. I had someone reach out to me recently, and they had gone the route of being on Instagram, being on TikTok, following all the trends, putting a lot of time, energy, which is money, into growing their audience and content super, super consistently. And they said, we actually don't have a local following, is what we figured out. Like, we have incredible stats. We've had clips go viral, but at the end of the day, did it put more money into their bank? No, because it wasn't a local following that was choosing to work with them. So we have some things coming together here. We're talking about strategy. Really comes back to big picture, your goals with your business and what you're trying to accomplish with these videos. We talked about what kind of content could work for a bunch of great ideas. Just start with the basics core tenets of your business and showing that off. What about when it comes to shooting? Do you like to shoot everything in a day? Do you like to piece it out? What have you seen is successful?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because I think that kind of comes back to one of the hurdles that sometimes can be a little bit daunting for a business owner, where they're like, shoot, I'm going to have to like set aside a whole week to do like a video and photo shoot and whatever. And that's going to take a lot of my time and a lot of my financial investment. And it actually can be so much easier than that. Like, we've been kind of tinkering with a concept where we just cruise in for like an hour or two, grab some quick video snippets, do some very like candid video interview style, which is another element of like having someone coach you through being able to show up on camera and being able to make you feel comfortable. And like when you're talking, for instance, right now, if I was just talking to a blank screen and didn't have someone that I'm connecting to and having a conversation on the other side of this, I would be at a loss. I would just be drifting. And so being able to connect with someone on the other side of a camera who can literally say, hey, that translated really well. Or like, hey, let's maybe say that again. And I feel like your tone came across this way. Let's maybe like do it in this way, or maybe let's turn. One of my favorite lines is like, let's turn it up 150%. Like let's pretend you just had a cocktail or two, and like you're telling someone new for the first time, like who you are and what you do, and sort of that excited, authentic, just very candid way. Instead of, it's hard to kind of pull ourselves out of our heads sometimes. And
are you a fan of having a script written out, bullet points of what you want to cover, or just going for it free?
Again, it really depends on what the intention is behind what you're trying to do. If you're doing, again, level of production, if it's just that sort of like popcorning questions, and I call it like the 5 Ws, like the who, what, when, where, why, and we can kind of coach you through pulling out of, say we're at an event and we just want someone to kind of give us like the audio backbone for whatever's going to be like some narrative or dialogue that we mix into like a little video to kind of showcase, hey, we have these vendors that we're working with, and this is this is what's going on over here, and this is what we're looking at here. It's kind of fun to be able to hear things and see things at the same time. So we can kind of coach you through that. But there are some times where, for instance, if it's more of like a sit down interview where it's like, hey, we actually have a product launch that we know we need to nail these 5 core things, and we do have some very intentional wording and scripting, then sometimes, using a teleprompter or using sort of bullet points or something like that can be very helpful. I think for what we're kind of tinkering with now, which is just a little bit more of a candid showing up on camera sort of feel, I think it's more sort of like, hey, I know I want to check these topics off the list. And so you don't necessarily have to have a script, but you can at least have some talking points that kind of help guide you through like, hey, I know I nailed my 3 main things that I wanted to get across. And then there's a lot of magic in editing to kind of make that feel seamless and very, and that is where then hiring someone to come in and basically give that flow and that extra level of polish to it can really make the difference between, again, me in the backyard trying to do 30 takes of one, or for instance, what if someone had been filming me and it could have been 2 takes and they would have stitched it together and it would have just been so like the flow would have been perfect.
Brian, you're doing great, or just change this.
Exactly.
Perfect, and we got what we need and we're done. So
a little coaching,
a little bit, it goes a long way. But if you show up for an hour, 2 hours a month, it seems like not that long. Like people are like, oh no, we need a half day or we need a full day. That's a long time. Like that. Well, what I mean is you can get a lot of video footage in that amount of time and have it be such a stress on the client.
Right. And so I think having consistency over like a big, and I've seen this time and time again where we have a client who's like, hey, we have this big idea. This is how we want to execute it. And we want this one video out of it, and we're going to spend all day shooting it or filming it. And then they post, or several days. And then you post it once on Instagram, and then you just wait to watch the interaction and the likes come in. And it's like, versus like, hey, what if we just do something that's bite-sized and digestible, and we can squeeze a couple different smaller videos out of it and sprinkle those throughout the week or throughout the month, and maybe even have, so we get a couple reels out of it. Maybe we get 4 or 5 stories out of it. And you just have so much more from something. At least that's the approach that we're kind of tinkering with a new idea of approaching this, just so that it's more exactly that. It's more approachable. It's more consistent. You get more out of it. And I know firsthand how it feels to like put so much work into one video, and then you post it, and maybe 20% of your following gets to see it. And then you don't have the luxury of like, I'm going to post it again next week just because I want more people to be able to see it. It's like, no, like you kind of, we're not in a space where we can repeat ourselves to infinity. Like we can approach things from a different way. Like we still show up. It's still us. But I don't know. I do think that being able to have a little bit more, I like the analogy of like squeezing a sponge out from like one quick shoot. For me, that sounds really enticing and awesome. And I want to hire someone to come do that for us.
Yes. Yeah. And that makes it exciting for you to provide that. So you have some ideas in mind. You show up 1 to 2 hours at the most. From that footage, you can do a couple of reels, 4 or 5 stories, which is about what you want to be putting on Instagram in a month anyways. Then what about, and you're editing it to be so, not Nike, not Peloton, but some cool effects to where people can tell it's not DIY. You got audio over B-roll clips, and you're splicing things together, and you have cool effects that are happening. And then from there, what are your thoughts on giving that to the client versus you posting for them? Now you're doing their engagement. Now you're commenting, you're replying to comments. Is that something the client should do? Should they have you do that? Should they hire someone else to do that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know that there are services that do offer that sort of like that white glove approach, start to finish. And sometimes that is where then it does almost feel unapproachable because you're paying someone so much to do so many different things.
Mm.
And to truly like understand, for someone to be able to come in and understand the core of your business and to understand your tone and your voice is a really, really hard thing to do. And so for them to do that, they have to charge a lot. Versus like you know exactly, like it's your, if you're a small business owner, nothing beats like your words and the way that you connect with your clients, people who are commenting, and you being able to go back in, like, hiring someone to go back in and connect with someone who may actually be a close friend and client from 10 years, you being able to reply to that comment versus some paid person who has no clue who they are, like that actually then comes off as almost a little disingenuous or a little like disconnected. So I do think it's a phenomenal idea for if you've already made the decision to be like, hey, we want to like up the level of some of our content, but I think it still should be to a degree like your voice and your words. So yeah, unless you've hired like a copywriter and a content strategist and all that kind of stuff, who's like really, really taking the time to like understand you, like I think using your own words, and then also building that habit of the follow up, of spending some dedicated time once you do put your content out there, whether it's stories or reels, and interact with your followers and with your, these are your clients and your friends and your whatever. And that to me shows a lot of authenticity when I'm going through, say, if I watch a reel and then I go into the comments, and if I see that the owner of that content or whoever that brand is like interacting all the way down, and I see that it's actually them, that means a lot to me. So that's my encouragement. Like, hey, we've already done the hard work. We've put the content in your hand, but you do have to show up and actually understand how Instagram works. Like, you do need to be the one that like loads it in, like uploads the file to your phone and clicks post. And there will be some things that go wrong at first. Maybe you miss a tag, or maybe something gets cropped wrong or whatever. But like, yeah, I do encourage people to know the platform. Cause then I think it gives you the ability to really interact with it. And that, I think that's meaningful to people. So,
yeah. If anybody has experience with this, doing it themselves versus hiring someone, they also know that you're going to get the furthest when you respect the way the platform is created. And these platforms are made to be managed by the person behind the profile. What I mean by that is when you do hire somebody or hand it over for someone else to do, you're always running into issues, logging in, verification. And so to your point too, it's like, but what we've explained so far sounds so doable from a client's perspective, probably compared to what maybe they've been doing so far. Because what we've talked about is hire professional equipment. It's going to stand out. Come up with some ideas, but very like fun, like your energy and your work is so fun and creative that's going to rub off on the client, because you're going to show up, you're going to have enthusiasm, you're going to be like, this is so cool, let's talk about this. So that part's going to be fun. They're having a good time. You get to be for a couple hours, shoot for an hour or two. Now you have your content. And so all you have to do at that point in this scenario, if this makes sense for the client, is to post, to share something that's, comes from the heart, and see what's out there, see how people are responding to it, and engage with them. I mean, what do you think the most time somebody would have to spend on this would make sense for them? Half an hour, a week would go a long way.
Yeah. And you've already relieved yourself of the burden of keeping yourself accountable for actually making the content. I think that half of hiring someone is just accountability. Half of it is just like, hey, like, we've put a date on the calendar, you're showing up, you're going to force me to make this video, even if it's like a tiny bit uncomfortable. And I guarantee like everything we do like helps people, like be at ease and be able to be themselves and whatnot. But still, like, you're basically taking the load off of yourself to like self-inflict. Like I said, that selfie video in the backyard that just like, oh man, if someone had just done it for me, like, would have been so much easier. And then you can truly focus on what you do best, which is your knowledge of who you are and how you want to show up to your people. Yeah, I think if you are able to offload some of that pressure, like truly then spending dedicated time just to like, hey, I know that I'm going to post I know that I have to show up and post this. And then I know that I'm going to set aside like half an hour later in the week to go back through. And like, even if you do that as a bare minimum, you're already pretty good shape compared to most, compared to how most people are showing up,
Yeah, absolutely. We are at time. It feels like I've been talking with you for 5 minutes. I can't believe our episode is up. If anyone is interested in, and these ideas that we've been discussing sound like a good fit for your business, highly encourage you to reach out to Brian, B Studios. What's the contact? Where can people find you if they want to look at your stuff or work with you, Brian?
Yeah, you can just Google us, our website, bstudios.org. We do have, it's our wedding landing page, but then we have a little branding section up at the top right. Kind of click through that and see some of the wide scope of different industries that we work in. And then also our Instagram. My personal Instagram is BM Sikich, Sikich. And then our B Studios _SB. B Studios, just regular, was already taken. So we're B Studios SB. But yeah. Track us down. Would love to continue to chat and just be a resource. And yeah, I feel like I could geek out on this stuff all day long. There's so much to talk about and so many different like nuances at all, but it's all great. And yeah, I was happy to be here today.
I love it. And go check out that video. Lion's Tail is a new bar in Montecito. Dylan Starr, local clothing retail boutique, styled everyone. Like, you're not going to believe it. It's so incredible. Like, the quality is so good. So check that out too. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate the conversation. And we'll look forward to talking with you soon.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, chat soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Nailed It, business tips from industry leaders, brought to you by Clever Punch. Nailed It is all about connecting with people, building relationships, and helping each other. If you're interested in connecting with any of the guests on our episodes, you can find their contact info in our show notes or on the podcast page at cleverpunchco.com. You can also email info@cleverpunchco.com with any questions or feedback. I'm your host, Jade Flogerzi. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.